Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Diane and my passion is painting and creating nature-inspired watercolours in my studio, which are easy for you to do too. I share all my paintings with you on YouTube, and on our website dianeantone.com you can find free downloadable sketches for all the videos to help you make the most of your painting journey. And if you'd like a little bit more, we also have channel memberships with loads of perks for you to enjoy. So welcome on board. Click subscribe and turn on notifications, and let's learn to paint watercolour. Today we're going to paint a rabbit. This is my sketch of my bunny rabbit, and I'm going to do this in a wet in wet way, which is easy to do, and then we're going to embellish it a little bit as we have been doing recently. Of course, you don't have to do that. The sketch of this, the black and white line sketch, will be available on the website dianeantone.com for free if you want to just pop on over there and download it for free with all the other sketches and things that we have there too, if you would like. So let's get started. We've got a watercolour pad here. This is Etcher, cold press, 140 pound cellulose paper. This is nothing special. They sent it to me for free, so I might as well use it. As you do. Always like a free lunch, don't you? Right, so I've pre-sketched this in pencil, but I'm going to go over it so you can watch me, excuse me, drawing it. Now, I pre-drew this because these things are not necessarily always as easy as you would like them to be. I'm going to put a couple of curly hairs up top there. This is a motif which takes me back to my childhood. And I said to Tamsin today, for goodness sake, if I start to revisit my childhood too often, you're going to have to stop me. I don't want to be like your father, who lives in the past and has gone around in a circle and he's back where he started from. Anyway, so then I went ahead and thought about this rabbit. Now, this rabbit was when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a commercial artist. When I was 3 or 4, I used to copy all the cartoons in the newspapers, and I used to say to my dad, Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be an artist and I want to draw cartoons for a living. And it never happened, obviously, as you can tell. But I used to draw Bugs Bunny, and I used to draw the Flintstones and all of them, and used to get a lot of pleasure out of that when I was little. And when I was in hospital a lot as a child. I used to have pneumonia and things like that quite often. I was a bit sickly, so when I was in hospital, I used to paint and draw and stuff like that. And sad story, isn't it? Sad. Anyway, so later on, when I went to grammar school, I remember one of my earliest memories there, we used to have a big canteen where we all had our lunch together, and we were all in tables of 12, and at the end of every table, there was a prefect, one of the senior girls, who was supposed to make sure that we didn't misbehave. And this one particular time, this prefect, who was a sixth former, she was entertaining us by drawing this rabbit. And I just fell in love with that rabbit. And I was about 11 at the time. And I used to draw it frequently on my books, my school books and everywhere. And that rabbit has been with me ever since. And so here he is, just appearing from my past to entertain and amuse and be part of my world today. And so, yeah, funny, isn't it, how these things transpire. Haven't been feeling very well today. I felt all really rubbish this morning, and I've just finally woken up and it's nearly time to go to bed. Honestly, you can't win, can you? Right, so that's the rabbit sketched out in pen, and now we're going to make him wet. and grab a brush. I've got a Drawwell Maestro brush here, which is the next level up from the red ones that I normally use. This is slightly superior in quality. We're going to do this wet in wet, and we're just going to do it really loose and wait and see what we do, because I think this is quite fun, this is. So you just literally make the whole thing. We'll try not to go over his eyes, but if we do, we can always paint them in with white gouache afterwards. So I have avoided his eyes, but it's not crucial. If you don't avoid them, it doesn't matter. Using gouache in conjunction with watercolor is quite a nice thing to do, because you can always correct your mistakes if you're willing to come in there with a bit of gouache afterwards, or you can lighten things up, adding some white, which watercolor doesn't work like that. So gouache will go on top of any watercolor mistakes, which you are bound to make. We all do, all the time. So now he's nice and wet. Now I've got my paints here, and I'm going to use a very limited palette. We've got quinacridone violet, we've got permanent rose, we've got cobalt blue and quinacridone gold, and that's what I'm going to use to paint my bunny rabbit. And it doesn't really matter what you put where. Doesn't matter at all, but you just drop the paint in like that, and don't brush it in, just drop it in. And this is where it's fun, because it just moves, right, like that, and does its own thing. So you can just do whatever colours you want. You could put some blue in here. Quinacridone is particularly good at moving. Or you could use ultramarine as well. That moves a bit better than cobalt blue. So we could put ultramarine in here, for example. And perhaps some pink on this side of his face. And at this stage, this kind of painting looks terrible. It really does. They look terrible, but have faith. Time for some more quinacridone, I think. We're going to make the carrot orange, obviously. So we'll put a base of quinacridone gold in there, and put some more around there. Maybe we'll put a bit here. And then we want the pink. Pink there, and I haven't really used the violet yet, so we'll put that here. Makes a nice contrast with the yellow. And we'll put some blue down here. And then I want some green, so I won't want that. I'm going to plunge into another palette just quickly there to get some green for the top of the carrot, which is going to be orange. Put some orange in there. So there we are. And since we are going to have to wait quite a while for that to dry, if I can find my little brush, first of all, I shall start with some black in the eye here. So that, oops, oh gosh, that shouldn't happen. Don't want that, do we? Mistakes do happen, and it doesn't matter. You can always put it right. Let's get that water flowing down a bit there. There we are, in the flow. take that out of there. Don't worry, if you've got a piece of paper towel, you can put things right. All right, try that again. I just wanted to put some black in there so that he doesn't look empty-headed. And we'll straighten those out a bit later. But okay, now we are going to let him dry. And we're going to try and let him dry as much as possible rather than forcing it dry with the hairdryer. So we will pick up our pen again, and while we're letting that dry, we want to do a couple of bits and pieces. I'm going to put some butterflies up here. I'm going to switch to a smaller size pen. That was a 3, and I'm going to switch right down to a 0.05. There we are. And I'm going to embellish the rabbit afterwards, but before we get to that, I shall spend a little bit of time on doing line work on these. I've been investigating Zentangle and mandala drawing over the last few days. I'm not sure whether I have the patience to do either of those things because I'm a bit cack-handed and slapdash, a bit kind of if it'll do kind of thing. But maybe it would be good therapy for me. When I feel a panic attack coming on, I do that tapping thing. Have you heard of that? That tapping thing where you tap the top of your head and your neck and everything, and after a bit you stop thinking you're about to die. It's quite helpful. There's a lady called Sharon Smith on YouTube who does it, and I quite like what she does. I have a bit of, what do they call it? Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm watching on television, Better Call Saul. Do you remember that? It's not that long ago. I think they just did another season, and we watched it a few years ago after we watched Breaking Bad. And I didn't like it at first because it wasn't Breaking Bad, but then I got used to it. And quite like what do you call it? Saul, what's he call himself? Better Call Saul. Saul Goodman. Saul Goodman, yes. Oh, yeah. And since I saw that, I have developed this kind of fear of going outside. So I kind of relate to his brother. He doesn't want to go outdoors. I don't blame him. We've all had that with the pandemic, haven't we? This kind of thing is very therapeutic. It is definitely, it absorbs you completely. And it's definitely to be recommended. I'm just doing some flowers down here, which I'm just going to, when I paint them, I'm just going to paint them really, really loosely with just a sort of splodge. And I'm drawing with a 0.05 pen nib, which is very fine and gives very shaky lines, not, messy, scratchy sort of lines on paper, which has got this much texture, which is quite nice. So we'll put a few leaves as well here, coming up the back, and tall grasses, I suppose you could call them, rather than leaves. Right, I think that's probably spread quite a lot now, so I'm going to put the hairdryer on it and get it nice and dry. But first, I want to tell you briefly about Skillshare, who are sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning platform with thousands of great classes to choose from. The class I'm looking at this month is Creative Meditation Zentangle Drawing by Casey Weber. This is an introduction to the Zentangle technique, which is helpful for me as I plan to learn how to tangle and to add tangles to my hashtag Paint a Bird a Day series in the future. If you haven't already, check out our hashtag Paint a Bird a Day on YouTube to get started. All Skillshare classes are ad-free and there are new classes every week, plus the whole catalogue is now available with subtitles in several languages. And because Skillshare is kindly sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description below will get a 1 month's free trial of Skillshare. Okay, so he's nice and dry now, so we are going to do some embellishments. I've got a Uniball Signo white gel pen, and I've got gold and silver as well in case I want to use those. Plus, of course, my microns that I've been doing the original drawing with. And if I need any more paint, I've got that at hand. But I, at this point, would switch to gouache. If I do any more painting, I have a palette set up here with all the different colours of gouache that I'm likely to need. And that's what I would use if I needed to do any painting on top of what we've already got there. So that's set up. Now, let me see. I'll grab this brush and just put a little bit of colour into these butterflies here. Excuse me, in case I forget. So we do a little bit of yellow and a little bit of pink. Just very light. Just so that there's something there. Okay, so let's see. We're going to put some spirals because I like spirals. So we'll start with spirals and maybe little flowers. But spirals are good. And we'll just sort of scatter them around. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And if you've used, like I have, a fairly rough paper, you will have to put up with a certain amount of jumping with the pen, because the rough paper doesn't really like pen all that much, does it? And this is the kind of thing you can do when you are watching television or just generally hanging out, doing nothing, relaxing, lying in bed, watching the birds. Well, you can't really paint and watch the birds at the same time, can you? Yeah, you know. I was teaching myself today how to do paisley patterns. I think it's better if you do it in black, but it's something like that. So we would do some white, like that. And then maybe we might switch to the black, fine one. I quite like doing black into the white. I think it gives a sort of, a little bit of a kind of antiqued kind of look, you know, a sort of, for some of them, not all of them, kind of, oh, you know, faded and sort of bashed about, like me. And what was I going to say? Oh yes, eyelashes. This bunny has definitely got eyelashes. And oh yes, white teeth. And the carrot, the jumbo carrot, needs a little bit more detail in the leaves. And I think I'm going to put a tiny bit more orange paint on there for the carrot. And like I said, this is where you can come in with a bit of gouache. Just emphasize the shape a bit, emphasize the colour. And maybe for the leaves as well. And the flowers. And he needs whiskers, or she does, rather. Whiskers. Let me see. What else can we do? Oh yes, I haven't finished this. She's curly hair on top. And maybe we might do a few on the ears. Makes quite a lot of difference when you do this kind of thing. I think it is sometimes an improvement. And don't forget to finish off her feet with the nice chubby little paws that she's got. Notice that she has become a girl. I really like her chubby little hands too. And you could go on forever doing this, couldn't you? You can, if you want to emphasize the colour of the flowers, I honestly think it's a good idea to mix up some pink and white gouache like this, and then you can just paint on the inside. You have to get the consistency right, but you can, and the colour. That's the trouble when you have too small a brush. Sometimes gouache doesn't flow very well, but eventually you'll get the consistency right, like that, and then you can do sort of a tonal variation. Just come in there with a darker pink. And I want to say that I'm learning this along with you because I am not an expert in gouache, but I do know what I'm doing when it comes to watercolor. So I can help you learn to paint gouache too. So we can learn together. So you can do that. And I think maybe this foot down here needs a little bit of something, doesn't it? A little bit of something. Yeah, I think we are getting there. We are definitely getting there. We are getting there. We need a tiny bit of something nice and pastel-y. A nice pastel green, blue, something like that for the floor, ground. Pop that into these leaves too because they were a bit faint. And these ones here need some colour. Put some more hearts in here. And I think we are getting there. I think we are getting there. The nice thing about doing these embellishments is that if you feel that you've made a mistake or you're not quite happy with the way it goes, the way it went rather, you can correct it using the pen. And using the gouache, come to that. For example, if you wanted to reduce the angle of the top of her head. It's one of my weaknesses is the tops of heads. I always get them wrong. So you can correct that. Like that. And then her ears become a little bit longer. There we are. I'm not going to fiddle anymore. I'm going to leave that and call it done. And I'm going to say, if you want the sketch, which is going to look something like this one here, except it'll be obviously in pen, so it'll be black and white. and then you can do what you like with that. Do pop over to dianeantone.com. I will let you go because it's 4 o'clock and it's time to do the animal feeding round. Yes. So, see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Come on, Rabbit. Let's go and feed the boys. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.